Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for August 3rd, 2025. Today, we're talking with Benyamin Poghosyan, a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, a Yerevan-based think tank. Hello, Benyamin. Welcome back to the Groong podcast.
Hello, Benjamin.
Hello, Aspet. Hello, Hovik. It's, as always, pleasure to be with you, and thanks for having me.
Likewise. So, okay, I have a riddle for you guys. First, it was 50 days, then 10 or 12 days, and now there's a specific date, August 8, 2025. We're, of course, talking about the deadline floated by Donald Trump for Russia to accept a full ceasefire in Ukraine or else. Russia doesn't seem to be too rattled, at least if you go by the words of Dmitry Medvedev, the former president and now head of Russia's Security Council. He fired back online, hinting at dead hand, which is Russia's doomsday nuclear system. So some call it trolling, but others see it as a Putin-Medvedev good cop, bad cop routine. But the US isn't laughing, and Trump has recently moved nuclear subs in response. So here we are, officials from the world's two top nuclear powers casually tossing around the idea of global annihilation. But let's come back to the backstory because, assuming that we don't all get incinerated in an apocalyptic war, the backstory is Ukraine. So, Benjamin, my question to you is that Trump's special envoy for intractable issues, another real estate guy, Steve Witkoff, is due in Moscow this week. What are your thoughts about what will be discussed? Will it just be Ukraine, this looming deadline that Trump has set, or maybe it'll be a global, more wider range of issues?
Okay, so frankly speaking, if we look what Witkoff has achieved in the last 6 months, frankly speaking, it's not impressive because Mr. Witkoff was negotiating with Iran, and initially we heard a lot of positive statements. Witkoff, President Trump, they were stating we're very close to deal with Iran. Negotiations are wonderful. Everything is nice. Everyone is happy. Something like Dolce Vita. All this ended with Israel-Iran war. Then Trump bombed Iran. Then the same Witkoff and Trump was telling that nuclear program is completely destroyed, obliterated, obliteration. Then now Trump says that I'm ready to bomb again. Like let's obliterate Iran again. So, and if you are jumping into Gaza, like again, 6 months, terrible sufferings in Gaza, like I think tens of thousands of people have died from hunger, from bombardments, and yet no significant achievements. It was, truce was stated, then it was violated. And also on Russia-Ukraine, look, when Mr. Witkoff first met with Putin for 6 and 7 hours, and then strangely flew also to Baku from Moscow, and then also several meetings. I think Mr. Putin even like gave Mr. Witkoff like Trump's portrait, and Trump said it was impressive. Even he was going to put this portrait on his bedroom, and it seems that okay, it's a bromance. I don't know, friendship or whatever. And then Trump stated that even his wife likes Mr. Putin very much. But at the end of the day, we all ended with this 50 days. 10, 12, 15. And given that Mr. Trump, according to SIC, it's like, I'm not sure this is deliberate or this is simply his nature, but he transforms the global politics or global geopolitics into some kind of reality show. I don't exclude that even he chose this August 8 because 8. So he thought that, okay, Americans said 9/11, now Russians should have 8/8, like a symbolism. I don't believe that anyone buy to these statements that Trump sent some submarines or whatever, because look, if we speak about nuclear missiles, armed submarines, these nuclear missiles, they can flew several thousand miles and they can hit Russia from any place inside this big ocean, and the same is for Russian nuclear submarines. So I don't think that this is a really serious threat, or anyone perceives that, okay, Trump and Putin will destroy whole the world.
Benjamin, it wasn't really clear whether he sent nuclear-powered submarines or submarines that were armed with nuclear weapons.
Yeah, but if it's even without simply nuclear-powered submarines, that I'm not sure that anyone will be surprised in Russia, and I'm not speaking about like threatened in Russia, oh, nuclear power submarines coming, it's the end of Russian statehood and etc. But okay, why Witkoff is in Russia? Maybe, but this is probably a joke. Maybe Mr. Putin has this time a portrait of Melania to send with Witkoff to Mr. Trump, telling that, okay, if I send a portrait to husband, I should do the same for the wife to keep, like, as Mr. Putin tells that Russia is protecting traditional family values. Yes, this is a main narrative of Mr. Putin, that all the West is in decadence, like it's complete disaster, while Russia is a key supporter of traditional Christian family values. So probably he thinks that, okay, both husband and wife should have their portraits. But if more serious, definitely they will speak about Ukraine. But look, frankly speaking, I even don't understand what they are speaking, because Russia's position was very clear, and it is very clear. I think Mr. Putin articulated his latest version of what Russia wants in Ukraine back in June 2024, when there was a like big meeting in the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At that time, even President Biden was there. Even Biden was still competing with Mr. Trump, and it was very clear that first, Ukraine and the international community or great powers or whoever should recognize Crimea plus 4 regions as a legal part of Russia and 4 regions in their like administrative borders, while Russia now controls only one region fully within its administrative borders. So this is demand number one, which means that Ukrainian troops should withdraw from many areas, including like Zaporozhye, a city of like 700,000, 800,000 people, or cities like Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. And I'm not speaking about smaller cities like Pokrovsk or Mirnograd, which Russia is not able to capture for months. This is demand number one. And I think it was Dmitry Medvedev or Mr. Medinsky, Putin's advisor or assistant, who also met with Ukrainians in Istanbul, who said that, look, we fought against Sweden like 21 years, so-called Northern War. And he said, okay, we can fight against Ukraine for another 21 years and get our territories, these 4 regions plus Crimea. The second demand, that Ukraine should be neutral country, forget about NATO membership, 100%. And also no international foreign military bases, no foreign military troops in Ukraine territory. Also, there was a demand of so-called denazification, which means canceling all laws against Russian language, against the Russia-affiliated Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and etc., etc. So more or less, this is a demand for complete Ukraine capitulation. And starting from June 2024, Mr. Putin's vision is very clear. I will continue war until Ukraine will capitulate. If Ukraine is ready to capitulate now, Ukraine can capitulate now. If they're ready to fight another 10 years and lost another, I don't know, Ukrainian will lose another 2 million people and Russia will lose another 2 million people, I am more than happy to do that. But at the end of the day, this will end with Ukraine's capitulation. So giving all this stuff, Mr. Trump's statements that, okay, like peace should be reached by August 8th, I think it's sound like really reality show.
Benjamin, though, I mean, he is the leader of the most powerful, if not, one of the most powerful, at least, countries in the world, and he's putting these deadlines.
United States or Russia or?
Well, both, but United States is arguably the most powerful country in the world, and the leader of that country is putting forth a date and saying that anyone, if that ultimatum isn't achieved, then he will put secondary, he used the word tariffs, but then I think a White House official clarified the word sanctions. So what, is there more clarity in your view on what repercussions could be waiting for countries that continue to purchase Russian oil? We know that India, I believe, reiterated that it will continue to purchase Russian oil despite the threat of the ultimatum. What are your thoughts about the repercussions to India, to China? Let's leave Armenia aside for a moment. We can talk about Armenia separately.
Okay, first of all, China. We all understand that China-US, they have a very complicated and complex relationship. And these complications will continue for decades, probably even beyond our lifetime. Hopefully they will not end with the war, either around Taiwan or somewhere else. But also US is in a very tough negotiation with China on trade deal. And I'm not an economist, but my understanding is that US needs China at least as much as China needs US. I'm speaking about economic terms. Let's not forget that China is financing US debt or was financing US debt. And let's not forget that US lives on debt. Like US national debt is like 120% of its US GDP and is growing and growing and growing because average American wants to keep his living standard more or less while he's not able to earn that money to keep his living standards, which means that US should continue to borrow. Of course, US exploits the role of US dollar as an international reserve currency to finance this debt. But at the end of the day, yes, China needs US market, but also US needs China to finance its debts. Plus, let's not forget that for last 5-6 years, even before COVID, President Xi launched the so-called dual circulation strategy on Chinese economy. And the emphasis was that, okay, we should not only put our hopes on export, like export-oriented growth model cannot be sustainable. And this is not only about China. By the way, the same problem now Germany is facing. Germany economic model was based on export growth model, and this is not sustainable. So China is taking steps to develop its internal market, internal consumption. Let's not forget that in last 25-30 years, 700 million Chinese became, they left poverty. Maybe these 700 million Chinese, they are not consuming as much than average Americans, but now they are consuming much, much more than, for example, 30 years ago. Which means that, yes, access to the US market is very important for China still, but it's less important than 30 years ago. Because A, there is a growing domestic market, and I'm speaking about 700-800 million people, like twice more, or even more than twice more than US population. I believe according to latest census, US population is like 340 million. Plus, China is increasing its export to other countries, starting from Brazil, ending with Russia, India, a little bit, ASEAN, and etc. While also, as I mentioned, so my understanding is that China now is a little bit less dependent on US market. It does not mean that China is not dependent, but it's less dependent and probably will become less and less dependent on US market. Plus, we have the European Union, which reached the trade deal with US, but many Europeans are comparing this trade deal with colonial era agreements. The agreement which like British Empire signed with Ottoman Empire in 19th century. Many Europeans are telling that this is complete humiliation. Like Trump forced EU to pledge 750 billion US dollar of buying American energy in the next 3 years. It means that EU should stop buying any energy from anywhere because overall EU energy exports were more or less 370 billion dollars. And will EU do that? We heard President Macron, he said we should renegotiate it. And many in Europe are telling, okay, there is like, let's put diplomatically like weird president in the United States, but this weird president will left office in January 2029, and then we will negotiate more normal deal. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't believe that US is in a position to force China to do something.
You're talking about very large economies here, China, India, Germany. They have their options. They can wait out this administration, etc. But Armenia also heavily relies on Russian oil and gas. And as a landlocked state, the options for alternatives are quite limited. If Trump's pressure on Moscow escalates from tariffs to sanctions, Armenia could be inside the so-called blast radius of this issue. Tariffs wouldn't hit Armenia that much because we don't export that much to the United States. But when it comes to sanctions, yeah, exactly. But when it comes to sanctions, the United States is already trying to sanction every country that deals with Iran, every country that deals with Russia. How would this go down if it comes to Armenia? Could Armenia realistically diversify its energy resources to avoid falling under these pressures? What are the risks of pushing the country into a deeper economic or geopolitical crisis if sanctions start hitting Armenia?
It depends what sanctions we speak, because in last 3 years, I think US imposed like tens of thousands of sanctions on Russia, but we see that simultaneously Russia-Armenia trade like jumped fivefold in last 3 years. And despite the fact that this year, in the first 6 months of 2025, it fell by 50%, but still, approximately in 2025, we will have $6 billion trade with Russia, 6 billion, while in 2021, it was only $2.5 billion. So I mean that there are tens of thousands of American sanctions imposed on Russia even before February 2022 due to this Crimea issue and etc. But especially after February 2022. So to say that, okay, US will impose sanctions, but there are tens of thousands of sanctions. Okay, let's take, I don't know, most devastating scenario, for example, US, for whatever reasons, because Armenia is like drop in a global economy, maybe less than drop in ocean. But let's assume for whatever reasons, Mr. Trump says that, okay, let's cut all Armenian banks from SWIFT if Armenia buys gas or petrol from Russia. I'm telling like extreme scenario, like if US will decide to transform Armenia into second Iran. From my understanding, this likelihood is less than 1%, because more or less Armenia is mostly perceived positively in the US, both by Democrats as a country who really or not really wants to be a democracy. Also, there is these Christian issues, like first Christian nation, sufferings, and etc. So, first of all, I don't believe that US will transform Armenia into next Iran. Like it's has zero logic even for Trump administration. But let's assume really US threatens Armenia to make next Iran if Armenia continues to buy Russian gas and Russian petroleum and Russian diesel. Like as of now, the only alternative, we have two pipelines entering Armenia. One is from Russia via Georgia, and second directly from Iran. The capacity of Iranian pipeline is approximately 2 billion cubic meters, and Russia annually consumes 2.1 billion cubic meters of gas. So in theory,
Armenia, you mean?
Yes, Armenia consumes 2.1 billion cubic meters of gas. So in theory, if Armenia is forced, again, I don't believe this is the case, but let's assume Armenia is forced to stop buying Russian gas, then Armenia may offer Iran to say, look, now I am importing gas, I'm using this gas to produce electricity and exporting this electricity back to Iran. But theoretically, Armenia can offer Iran that, okay, guys, let's stop this gas for electricity scheme, at least for a few months, until we see what's happening globally. And let's use this full capacity of Iran-Armenia pipeline. Again, it's approximately 2 billion cubic meters per year. And in this perspective, Armenia will be able to cover its natural gas demand like approximately 90 or even 95%.
Of course, I believe there are already sanctions on energy trade with Iran as well.
Yeah, but still we are getting this Iranian gas. So if you complicate situation even more, telling that Mr. Trump will say, I will destroy Armenian economy if you buy gas both from Russia and on Iran, then I think we have only two options. Either to send Mr. Trump to some not very pleasant place, or B, knocking Mr. Aliyev door and asking Azerbaijani gas. Because we have no LNG, even Georgia has no LNG terminal. Like even we cannot buy LNG, bringing these LNG tanker to the Black Sea, then receive normal gas in Georgia, and then say, okay, guys, we are ready to pay like 10 times more, but let's bring Qatari or Algerian LNG to Poti or Batumi, and then pump this LNG as a gas into this pipeline and bring to Armenia. This is simply not possible. So either you have gas from Russia or from Iran or from Azerbaijan. But again, like thinking that Trump will decide to destroy Armenia, I don't know for whatever reasons. Okay, but from this perspective, then Mr. Putin may decide to invade Armenia and decide to bomb Yerevan, then send paratroopers to occupy Armenia. If you jump into this area, then okay, Trump may decide to destroy Armenia economically. Mr. Putin may decide to send 20,000 troops inside Armenia and make Armenia another subject of Russian Federation. But I don't want to jump into this type of scenarios.
Yeah, you said this is a very low probability. So I was going to ask what advice you would have for the Armenian government. But if this is an extremely low probability, it's probably worth waiting to see if it even happens before really reacting to something like this.
I mean, August 8th is 4 days away. And the only evidence we have is Trump's words that any country doing business with Russia would face secondary sanctions. So maybe, I mean, it's funny that we have to speculate on this because there's nothing else. But allow me to maybe like not disagree with you, Benjamin, but voice my concern that we are in a situation where we have the outright words from one of the chief superpowers in the world and nothing else to counter that except hope that Trump doesn't destroy Armenia.
But
I mean,
Hovik, can I interject? It's been 3 years since the Ukraine war started, and there have been extreme sanctions imposed on Russia, and Armenia has been
this
one
is
of the primary sanctions
secondary.
busters.
No,
And
secondary
the United
sanctions have
States
never
hasn't
been.
done anything about it.
So this is about secondary sanctions, which are the first time that are being floated. So the threat of secondary sanctions means any country doing business with Russia, not just Russia itself, and that hasn't been applied before. So anyway, I guess we'll just wait and see. It's maybe by the time we release this podcast, it'll be August 6th or August 5th, and it'll be closer to the deadline, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's wait and see. I think Mr. Witkoff again will be in Russia, but again, like I see this all is like a part of some very strange soap opera. It's very difficult to understand who is screenwriter, who writes the script of this soap opera.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, let's move on. So this week, the pressure continued to mount on Armenia in terms of, this 42 kilometers of land that is now on the top of everyone's attention. Turkey's ambassador in Baku has been banging the drum for an extraterritorial corridor through Armenia. Over in Ankara, the U.S. ambassador is floating a bizarre proposal, to say the least, about leasing the so-called Zangezur Corridor from Armenia for 99 years. Meanwhile, Pashinyan's civil contract party is sending mixed signals. On one hand, we have civil contract MP Armen Ashotyan, who said that the U.S. offer to lease the corridor would undermine Armenian sovereignty. But then Mr. Turkish-Armenian normalization, Ruben Rubinyan, said that Yerevan has only rejected transit arrangements that do not conform to Armenian law, leaving the door open to some form of compromise, which we don't know about. And Pashinyan's own spokesperson claims sovereignty is non-negotiable, but road management can be outsourced. Adding fuel to the fire, there are rumors that we're reading just today that there might be a possible Pashinyan-Aliyev summit in Washington, though Yerevan officially has not confirmed it, although it has not confirmed this in terms of a Armen Press article, which is a government-funded media. So usually when that happens, it's a confirmation through denial. So could a possible Pashinyan-Aliyev summit in Washington signal a major shift in the so-called Zangezur Corridor? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, regarding the meeting, like my intuition tells me that if there was not going to be any meeting, most probably the Armenian government would reject this. So if there is a statement that now or as of today we're not able either to confirm or reject, but we are speaking about like 3 or 4 days, because yes, there was a rumor that the summit will take place on August 8th, like the same day as US should impose these secondary sanctions, the same day, like, and Pashinyan will meet with Mr. Trump, then Aliyev will meet Mr. Trump, and then there will be the trilateral summit meeting or whatever. So my intuition tells me that this meeting most probably will take place. Otherwise, this was going to be rejected. And it's not only this Azerbaijani journalist in US, but also then many experts, also some government-affiliated experts in Armenia, tweeted this, telling that, oh, this is a big development. So they also told that this has nothing to do with peace agreement. This has to do some new US initiative on Armenia-Azerbaijan normalization. So they are not going to sign peace agreements. They are not going to discuss peace agreements. They are going to discuss something else. Something else, I don't know what is it. Maybe this is somehow related to this restoration of communications or Zangezur Corridor. But look, here we are like, there is a famous joke in Armenia that you have 0 chances if you are looking after cat in dark room, especially if there is no cat. So trying to understand what may happen or may not happen in Washington on August 8th, or on what Armenia and Azerbaijan may agree or not, while at least I have 0 information besides these leakages and these contradicting statements. And also there are a lot of vague terms, like, okay, I may say that, okay, I'm against leasing, but I am okay with outsourcing, but what is the difference between outsourcing and leasing? Or I am against leasing if it violates sovereignty, but I'm not against leasing which is not violating sovereignty. And who is going to decide? For example, if on Friday there will be statement that, okay, we reached something, and Pashinyan says that, oh, this is not violating our sovereignty. But then many opposition politicians will say, no, this violate Armenian sovereignty. Then we will have pro-government lawyers who will bring 120 references to the international law telling that this is not violating Armenian sovereignty. Then oppositional lawyers will bring 135 references to the international law telling that this violates Armenian sovereignty, and it will become the usual mess. So frankly speaking, I would advise not to jump into speculations. I am just telling that according to my intuition, meeting most probably will take place. Again, I'm using most probably because simply I don't know, but my intuition tells me that something may happen there. I mean, a meeting. But what results will be these meetings? They will speak about peace agreement. They will agree to pre-sign peace agreement, because both Pashinyan and Aliyev confirmed that during July 10 Abu Dhabi meeting, the idea of pre-signing this peace agreement was floated. So maybe they will confirm that they are pre-signing peace agreement. Maybe they will say we don't care about peace agreement, but they will sign some statement or MOU regarding the restoration of communication. Maybe they will sign something else, because we have very, very little information, and we do not have crystal ball. I just want to speculate, because each of us can bring like 10 options what may or may not happen in Washington. One of my colleagues gave me a good joke. He said that after Trump failed to make Canada the 51st state of the United States, and now he decided to make Sunni 51st state of the United States. So the idea to list Sunni is the first step to make Sunni is a 51st state of the United States. I'm not sure this will make people living in Sunni happy or not. The prospects to get US passport then becoming a US 51 state, but of course this was a joke.
Yeah, Benjamin. So let's shift a little bit and talk about the corridor from the perspective of Armenia's northern and southern members. So there's been no shortage of warnings about this corridor from Russia, from Iran, and other global players. But Fyodor Lukyanov, the guy who essentially interviews Putin every year at the Valdai Club, he joined us recently and suggested that for Moscow, at least for the time being, the so-called Zangezur Corridor takes a backseat to the war in Ukraine. Let's assume that this accurately represents Russian policy for a second. Still, if the U.S. through Turkey and Azerbaijan essentially manages to push through this corridor, it would cut against interests of not just Russia, not just Iran, but also India, and who depends on the international North-South trade corridor, INSTIC, as well as China, which is racing to build its own corridor under this Belt and Road Initiative. So let me ask, before I move on, do you agree that Lukyanov's position on this corridor accurately represents Russian policy? I mean, how long can or will Russia disregard issues like this, especially this corridor in the South Caucasus?
I would agree that not only the Zangezur Corridor, but probably anything else is now secondary for Russia compared to Ukraine. It does not mean that Russia is not doing anything in the world. You see, Russia is still inactive in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, but of course, if you compare with the outcome of the war in Ukraine, everything is secondary, because the outcome of the war in Ukraine is existential for Russia. At least, from my understanding, this is a perspective of people sitting in Kremlin. They strongly believe that the outcome of war in Ukraine is existential for Russia, and nothing else is existential for Russia. And if you ask me, is Zangezur Corridor an existential threat to Russia? I would say, okay, it's threat. It's probably like a bad thing, but I'm not in a position to say that this is an existential threat to Russia. While, of course, like defeat or negative development in Ukraine, this may be existential threat for Russia, at least for the Russia in its current form. And I'm not speaking about like territorial integrity, but as a state institutions, etc. Frankly speaking, I'm not too much sure that India and China will perceive the Zangezur Corridor again as a like vital threat, even not existential. Yes, India is interested to have connection with Russia via international north-south transport corridor. But let's not forget that currently this international north-south transport corridor has 3 routes, and none of these routes pass via Armenia. Route number 1, the main route, is India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia. Second route, India, Iran, and directly via Caspian Sea to Russia. And route number 3 is India, Iran, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Russia. So to say that this international north-south transport corridor will be hampered because there is a Zangezur Corridor, no, because first of all, India was thinking about, yes, theoretically, India may reach Europe as one of the alternative routes to reach Europe via Iran, Armenia, Georgia, Black Sea, Europe route. But to be very frank, this is a very complex and complicated route. First of all, Iran is under international sanctions, and I'm not sure if you can organize large-scale cargo transportation via Iran to Europe. Regardless, it's going from Iran via Armenia to Georgia, or even Iran, Turkey, Europe, or whatever. This is issue number 1. Issue number 2, still there is a lack of infrastructure connecting Armenia and Iran. No railroad. And also these new highways, tunnels, construction is on the way. I'm speaking both Sisian Kajaran and Kajaran Agarak sections. They will be ready somewhere in 2031, 2032. So this is like a not pleasant thing for India, but I'm not in a position to say that, oh, this is a vital threat for India, and India will put all these muscles to prevent Mr. Trump reaching some understanding between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Regarding China, okay, China views South Caucasus as part of this additional route which will connect or may connect China with Europe. We know that there is a main route, it's a sea route, and still 90% of China-Europe trade, 90%, goes via sea. 10% goes via land. But even despite all Western sanctions against Russia, from this 10% trade, absolute majority still goes via northern route. I mean, China, Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Poland, Germany. But yes, of course, China is interested to have alternatives. But from Chinese perspective, there is alternative. It's Central Asia, Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Black Sea, Europe, or Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey via Baku, Tbilisi, Kars, and Europe. If there will be additional railroad which will connect Azerbaijan with Turkey, let's say Baku, Horadiz, Megri, Nakhichevan, Kars railroad, we know that Turkey starts construction of Kars-Nakhichevan railway. Probably it will be ready in 2028. And let's assume also in 2028 we will have this railroad via along Araks River in Armenian territory, these 43 or 44 kilometers. Then we will see another railroad connecting Azerbaijan with Turkey, which means that this railroad also could be a potential like sub-route or one of the sub-routes of this middle corridor. Like some portion of Chinese good, in theory, may reach Europe, not only via Kazakhstan, Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Black Sea, or Kazakhstan, Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Turkey, Europe, but also via Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, Europe.
But in all cases, Azerbaijan becomes the bottleneck for China's trade ambitions, right?
Okay, if if we speak about South Caucasus, via South Caucasus, in any case, regardless it is passing through Armenia, let's assume the Armenia-Azerbaijan border remains as it is, and Armenia-Turkey border remain as it is. But if you want to transport something via South Caucasus to Europe, you have to use Azerbaijan. So in any case, regardless, it will be Azerbaijan, Georgia, Black Sea, Europe, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, Europe, or Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Europe. You have to pass via Azerbaijan. There is of course, there is an alternative route. You can use like China, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Turkey, and also via Turkey to export to Europe. But again, because Iran is under international sanctions for last, I guess, 46 years, since 1979, plus the recent 12-day war between Israel and Iran proves the situation in Iran is volatile, and no one can exclude that we will see another Israel-Iran war in late 2025 or maybe in 2026, and this war may be even like longer than this 12-day war. I don't think that as of now there will be significant emphasis on Iranian territory as a large-scale cargo transportation. So from Indian perspective, even these free routes which I discussed, the free routes of international north-south trade corridor, like India, Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, India, Iran, Caspian Sea, Russia, or India, Iran, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Russia, these all are complex and complicated. Because yes, Iran may say, I don't care about European sanctions, and Russia definitely does not care about European sanctions, so you may use, okay, sanctions cannot prevent to use Iranian territory to reach Russia, or Western sanctions cannot prevent Russia to use Iranian territory to reach India and some other Asian countries, which is true. But if there will be another Iran-Israel war, then even for India it will be complicated to use Iranian territory to reach Russia, either via Azerbaijan or Caspian Sea or Central Asia. So what I'm trying to say, like I will not fully agree, at least to the idea that the opening or restoration of communications between Azerbaijan and Armenia, or in particular, if there will be only one communication open between Armenia and Azerbaijan, this railroad, which will pass this 43-kilometer along Artsakh River and enter Nakhichevan. I'm
And
not in a
controlled by the
position to
US.
say that controlled by US, outsourced or whatever. I'm not in a position to say that this will be a vital threat for India and China. I will be extremely surprised if President Xi will convene this standing Politburo committee meeting, these 7 people, who people tell them in China, like, we have 7 gods. Like, we are atheists, we don't believe in gods, but we have 7 gods. This is the members of standing committee of China. I don't believe that these 7 gods will come and say, oh, China is going to be destroyed. Why? Because some 43-kilometer railway goes from Azerbaijan to Nakhichevan. No, I don't think so.
But Benjamin, that's the case for China and India. But what about Iran? Because in particular, Iran has made its position and red lines very clear, and prominent voices in Tehran still talk about Azerbaijan being a base for Israeli operations against Iran, including, like you mentioned, the 12-day war. But more recently, I think it was just a few weeks ago that new President Masoud Pezeshkian was in occupied Stepanakert and taking as a photo op with to be seen with Aliyev. So has the situation evolved for Iran? Do they still have the same red lines? Is it an existential threat for them to have this corridor that blocks Iran from Armenia?
I would
And
say
Russia.
yes, and
North,
not to be like opinion based, like I think so because I think so, but evidence based. Like I think a week ago, Mr. Velayati, which is a senior advisor on foreign policy to Supreme Leader, so probably the second most influential person who can speak on foreign policy. Mr. Velayati publicly stated that the Zangezur Corridor is a US, NATO, and Turkey plot against Iran, and he said that this is unacceptable for Iran and this is a vital threat to Iran's national security. So this is not just an opinion, this is fact. The problem here is that what Iran can do, that definitely this is a vital threat against Iran if there will be either lease or even some outsourcing with American private company. I strongly believe that still this will be perceived in Iran as a vital threat. But let's see what can Iran do against it. Like some people are circulating ideas that, oh, Iran will send troops to Sunik and will occupy Sunik. Frankly speaking, I don't buy it. I'm not in a position to believe that Iran will like launch war against Armenia and will occupy Sunik, telling that, okay, I will occupy Sunik, not to allow American private company to land in Meghrib. For me, it's like a little bit too far-fetched. But what Iran can do? Some experts are circulating ideas that, okay, then Iran may try to organize some, I don't know, guerrilla warfare or some subversive actions against these Americans, even using drones. Like to hit this railway or these Americans from Iranian territory on Armenian territory from Iranian territory. Okay, theoretically this is possible. We all know that Iran is master of asymmetric warfare. But to launch successful asymmetric warfare, you should have proxy forces. Iran was successful in asymmetric warfare in Lebanon, in Syria, and Iraq because he had local proxy forces there. In Armenia, there are no local proxy Iranian forces, military forces, so it will be extremely difficult for Iran to do that. Yes, theoretically, Iran may use artillery or drones simply to bomb this railroad and destroy it. But again, this will be the military action against Armenia. Is Iran in a position to do that and kill American citizens? Because even if it's private American company, it will be American citizens. Like if you will ask me, will Iran organize some like military action, direct or indirect, and kill Americans who theoretically will be deployed in Meghrib for outsourcing? For me, it's a very, very doubtful. Because again, this will be the excellent, excellent present maybe to President Trump to send another B-2 or B-52 or whatever, this time to make an additional bomb, telling that, okay, like Iran killed American citizens. So what I'm trying to say is that, yes, this still is a vital threat to Iran. But frankly speaking, I have doubts if Iran has real capacities to prevent this from happening, like what Iran can do.
Benjamin, are Russian and Iranian interests aligned in the case of this Zangezur Corridor issue?
I would say yes, but from my perspective, the Zangezur Corridor is perceived in Iran as a vital threat, while in Russia as a simple threat. Again, this is my understanding based also on my discussions with Russian experts, because when you speak with Iranians, they are telling, oh, this is a NATO corridor, Turan corridor. Iran will be encircled with this pan-Turkic belt. It will be Turkey, then Nakhchivan, then Sunni, some sort of under Turkish influence, and then Azerbaijan, then Israel, US, UK will use this Turkic belt to instigate separatist movements in northern Iran to create some form of southern Azerbaijan independent republic or autonomous republic. So Iranians are really, they have concerns that this is a vital threat to their statehood. But when you speak about the Russians, they say, yes, of course, it's not good. We would like if the corridor will be opened under Russian control. And let's not forget that Article 9 effectively meant to mirror Lachin corridor in Syunik. Like there was a Lachin corridor when there was no Azerbaijani border troops, police, passport control, customs control, only Russians. And Russia, of course, would like to mirror this in Syunik. But Armenia rejected this option at the end of the day, telling that, okay, I rather would agree to see Lachin corridor closed and even Karabakh destroyed than allow to mirror a Lachin corridor in Syunik. Yes, Russia would happy to see Lachin corridor mirrored in Syunik, and even I think after demise of Nagorno-Karabakh, they would be happy to see some sort of Russian control over this route. But I don't believe that this is an existential threat for Russia. So it's a threat, but there is a different level of perception of threat.
Understood. All right. Let's wrap up our topics today. Let me ask each of you to share something with our audience that's been on your mind since last week. Let's say, Benyamin, you go first this week.
Okay, not from last week, but from last few hours when I first heard there is going to be a summit, and then it more or less was confirmed, or at least it was denied. It was not denied, let's put it this way, or was semi-confirmed. So my understanding is that because, as I said, from my personal understanding, like Mr. Trump transformed US foreign policy or even global geopolitics into some sort of reality show. So let's see what the next episode will be. So there were many episodes, so let's wait what's the next episode of this big soap opera under the name of Trump geopolitics. What happened on, I don't know, Thursday or Friday? Let's see.
Okay. Hovik, what's on your mind?
Well, unfortunately, I have to put on my angry Armenian hat again. So on a recent episode of Dialogue Works, which, you know, in other times has more intelligent guests. This time it featured Scott Ritter, who denied the Armenian Genocide. And he smeared Armenians as having nothing to offer but Kim Kardashian's butt, and echoed genocidal Turkish propaganda, accusing Armenians of killing over 1 million Muslims, and framed 1915 as deportations in reaction to those murders. This is reprehensible for anyone who knows anything about history. Furthermore, Scott Ritter used Pashinyan's betrayal of Armenians. He, of course, thinks Pashinyan betrayed Russia and Iran, but first and foremost, Pashinyan betrayed Armenians. So he used this betrayal as an excuse to insult the entire Armenian people. So here's my response to Scott in a language that you'll understand. Scott Ritter, you vile little man, mocking a genocide while reducing Armenians to Kardashian jokes and spewing Turkish propaganda like a cheap mouthpiece for Ankara. You don't know history, you just recycle lies. For your information, Armenians were called the loyal millet. Unfortunately, we were slaughtered because we didn't rebel as ferociously as perhaps the Greeks did, or the Bulgarians, or the Serbs. And now, you dare blame the victims of genocide to justify your bromance with Turkish fascism? You're not just wrong, you're disgusting. So here's our message from the Armenian people. F you, F your genocide denial, F your revisionism, and F anyone who gives you a platform to do those things.
Okay, so I strongly agree with you, Hovik. The interesting thing is that he wasn't just denying the genocide, which is through the Turkish narrative. I mean, this is a well-understood narrative that Armenians rebelled and were being deported from the fronts, etc.
This is like
stuff like this.
Complete Turkish propaganda,
straightforward, right? But the interesting thing is that he goes into extremely personal insults. Like, I mean, where did Kim Kardashian come from? It shows that he's got a personal hate agenda against Armenians, and he's had this. I mean, there was a time when in 2003, I thought this was a man who was going to be telling the truth. He was standing up to the machine. He will, you know, you remember the days of weapons of mass destruction and stuff like that, BS like that coming out of the bush administration, and Scott Ritter was the one who was opposing that on the ground in Iraq. But this man clearly hates Armenians,
In the in
and
the in the in the
somehow,
words of
go ahead.
Larry Johnson, he's being worked on. I strongly believe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sorry to see that, but this is a vile man, and fuck you, Ritter.
Double fuck you, Ritter.
We'll end on that lovely note. Thank you, Benjamin, for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your insight on our show.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Hovik, it is time for what we call the kitchen sink, where the stories are too hot, too weird, or just too corrupt to leave alone. So we have a couple of topics which we've collected over the last couple of weeks. What do you have in mind today?
So let's begin with the news of the day, which is that Armen Ashotyan was or will be released from house arrest after being in some form of detention for the last 25 months, so more than 2 years. He first was under solitary confinement in the KGB prisons, and then he was put on house arrest with full restrictions on internet use and things like that. But now apparently he will be released to some kind of administrative monitoring or administrative supervision. For those who don't know, Armen Ashotyan is vice president of the Republican Party of Armenia and one of the most, essentially that's the second largest opposition party, and he has been one of the most prominent targets of Pashinyan's crackdown recently. So the conditions for his administrative supervision are the following. He must not leave his living area, and I don't know how that's defined, whether that's his house or his neighborhood, his apartment block or whatever, he must not leave his living area from 2200 until 0800 in the morning. He must report to his probation officer 3 times a week. He must not communicate with any other witnesses in his case. And on top of this, his previous limitations, his bail that he had put and his prohibition from leaving the country remain in place. His lawyers argue, and I would agree, that this is tantamount to almost restriction of freedom, given so much control over his whereabouts and so forth, so many restrictions. And I would assume that this would continue, and the authorities will come up with new schemes to put him back behind the bars. But before we move on,
Hovik, before you move on for just a second, let me remind one thing that you went through as if it's a normal thing. This pretrial detention, which we have discussed in previous episodes, is basically the Armenian justice system's black hole for people undesirables, according to the government, to throw them in jail or house arrest or put limitations on their freedoms indefinitely. They have the right to do this pretrial detention thing for 2 months at a time. And just imagine, Armen Ashotyan has been in pretrial detention for 2 years now. And as far as I know, there's not a date for this trial. There's not a real definite thing coming up. So he's just in limbo. For 2 years of his life, he's been in limbo, waiting for a trial that's, not happening.
Yeah, just to be clear, pretrial detention is one of the administrative control measures. So after extending his pretrial detention multiple times, they changed it towards house arrest, which is an alternative to pretrial detention.
And they can change it back.
And they can change it back. They'll find some new fact that was previously unknown, and some new recording or whatever. So in terms of pretrial detention, Armenia is one of the highest in Europe in the use of pretrial detention. And I was watching some program. We should get the accurate numbers, but I think more than 50% or close to 50% of people sitting in prisons, Armenia right now, are in pretrial detention rather than serving actual time. So that's a statistic that I wouldn't sign under right now, but we will definitely get that. But in terms of statistics, Armenia, I believe after Andorra, Armenia is number 2 in all of Europe in terms of the percentage of pretrial detainees. So yes, and before we move on, I want to say that Armenia has more than 20 political prisoners in Yerevan right now. Armen Ashotyan was just one of them. We, of course, have talked about Samuel Karapetyan, the two archbishops, David Galistyan, member of Artsakh parliament. All of these were basically scooped up as part of these fabricated, in my opinion, allegations of terrorism and so forth. We keep talking about this, but they haven't proved this at all. They use images of shotguns as proof, for instance, that they were gonna, shotguns that had legal license, for the owner, as proof that this is going to be some kind of a regime change operation, which is ridiculous. Anyway,
Hovik, let's put a list of all the people that we know of as political prisoners in the show notes. I don't know if you want to read them all, but I think we owe it to them to actually list them in our show notes so that people can see what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should list them in the show notes.
One more thing, Hovik, as you are talking about these political prisoners in Armenia, we also have political prisoners of war in Baku. And you know that they've been ongoing sham trials for the last 2 years, 3 years, I believe. And until now, the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, had access to them. Periodically, they'd be able to visit them. I think we've all heard the name Zara Maduni, who's the executive director of the Red Cross. And
in Armenia,
in Armenia, and they would have access to these people, and this access was extremely limited. Basically, they have to sign non-disclosure agreements of not saying what's going on or specifics about their health, and they were just supposed to come back and report.
For instance, they couldn't confirm whether the black eye under one of the prisoners was, there,
hardly anything.
or whether he fell or whether he was beaten. That was
basically all we could get was that, for example, somebody's alive or somebody's not doing great or something like that. Well, now that is over. Azerbaijan has reportedly revoked the ICRC's access, prompting the Red Cross to shut down its entire mission in Azerbaijan. I mean, there's no point if they can't visit prisoners of war, if they can't do what their mission requires, why be there? And Pashinyan's government says that these POW issues theoretically will be addressed in the so-called peace agreement that he is signing with Aliyev. But as Ruben Vartanyan's lawyer, Jared Genser, has told us, there's nothing in the draft agreement that we have read about POWs. They are completely forgotten, these people. And now the Red Cross cannot even get there. So what do you think? Will the EU or the West finally sanction Azerbaijan for shutting the ICRC out of the country?
Oh, absolutely. Right after they send Aliyev a thank you card for being such a reliable energy partner.
I'm not so sure. You know that Ursula von der Leyen is all but a fangirl of Ilham Aliyev's.
Yeah, she will be the first in line to go thank Aliyev for, holding the Armenian prisoners. Anyway,
European values,
it's ridiculous.
European values.
F you to Europe. while we're on the topic of FUs today, for this particular case, for overlooking Armenian prisoners of war. So, okay, let's talk. So we have this flower diplomacy. We've been talking about recently that Armenian flower vendors were being held up at in Georgian customs. Now, Russia has imposed restrictions on flower imports from Armenia. Believe it or not, this is a pretty significant business, and Armenia is the second largest exporter of flowers to Russia. Frankly, I'm going to just take it aside. Like I was, I understand. My understanding is that flowers are a very fragile business, and you must have it's crazy to even think about that. Armenia can be a reliable exporter of flowers given the conditions of the road and everything, and why Armenian growers are investing money into raising flowers versus other agriculture that Armenia might need. But that point aside, Russia claims that some of the flowers do not conform to sanitary standards, and some are re-exports from third countries. So potentially Armenia is importing flowers from Netherlands, maybe. I don't know what other countries. But so Armenia said it's looking into the issues, but regardless, tens of millions of dollars are at risk here for the Armenian economy. If you ask me, this is the Armenian government playing politics with Armenian business revenues. But yeah, I mean, you poke the bear and Now you complain about not being able to send flowers to the bear. I don't know what I can say about that.
Hovik, another topic that is dear to both of us, I know, that because we have commemorated this issue almost every year since it happened in 2022. I think it was April of 2022 when the tragic death of Sona Mnatsakanyan happened, when Pashinyan's convoy was speeding through the streets of Yerevan, basically. Now, somebody is finally, after 3 years, somebody is finally being held responsible, or so it seems. This week, a court convicted Armen Ashotyan, the driver of the prime minister's convoy, for fatally striking Sona in April of 2022, more than 3 years later. She was pregnant. She was a newlywed, crossing the street when the speeding official hit her and killed her. She died of her wounds. But let's be honest, this conviction really smells more like a scapegoating than justice. Video showed the car was clearly speeding, and I'm really sorry to see that the whole issue has come down. Were they speeding? Were they not speeding? As if, that is the issue. I mean, we have killed a pregnant newlywed here, and we're talking about, was he driving 108 kilometers or was he under 100 kilometers?
And the life that was
ludicrous.
Beside her at the same time.
Yes. Yeah. But the video showed the car was clearly speeding, as I said. Yet key audio evidence, recordings that could confirm who gave the orders, has mysteriously vanished or been withheld. At least the court doesn't have access to it. Yeah. Was Ashotyan acting on instructions from superior officers, which, was a claim in the court, or was the order to not slow down given from inside the car? And who was inside the car? Pashinyan himself. At the time, there were rumors that Pashinyan had ordered not to slow down and not to stop for any pedestrian traffic. The defense floated some crazy claims, suggesting that Sona didn't stop because she opposed the prime minister's views. How would you know? How would you know this? The woman is dead. And they're saying ridiculous things like this. I mean, I'm really surprised that outlandish claims like this can even be made in the court.
Imagine being the parents. I mean, this is insult to injury, to be honest. To be
this family, the Mnatsakanyan family, has had to fight tooth and nail against the government in Armenia to get some justice, and it's boiling down to, was he driving 108 kilometers or 99 kilometers? Anyway,
and I just also want to say that those claims, whether Sona Mnatsakanyan was an opposition activist who suicided herself, are being spread not just by the defense. I mean, maybe they have a right to throw every wild, theory out there, but also by pro-Pashinyan propaganda outlets that normally act against the opposition. So some of these are controlled by civil contract officials themselves, such as Armen Ashotyan. Each top-level civil contract official has one of these popular media sites that they control,
with which they need to go public. And I mean, Pashinyan himself actually at one point said that it wasn't him who was in the convoy; it was the prime minister's bus convoys. I don't even understand what he means, but that's mostly the case with Pashinyan anyway. Anyway, I just want to say 3.5 years, but rest in peace, Sona Mnatsakanyan. It really hit my heart when the issue arose.
Yeah.
One person may go behind bars, but the truth is still at large, to be honest.
And you know what? I'm sorry to say this again, but I think that this is just a court of first instance. I fear what may happen is that either the sentence will be reduced because as long as this Pashinyan regime, remains in power, they will be looking out for their cronies. So perhaps
soon the guy may be in pre-trial detention or post-trial detention inside the limo. He may not leave the limo.
He'll be more free than Armen Ashotyan for certain.
Yeah.
So there's this new report about wildfires in Artsakh. Now, wildfires have never been particularly a part of Artsakh Republic's landscape. They don't occur naturally there, but hundreds of acres, orchards, cultural sites, and monuments have burned on the eastern fronts of Artsakh in the past weeks. And they have destroyed Armenian and Christian monuments, buildings, farms, and other heritage sites. And hardly any effort has been made by Azerbaijan to stop these fires. Some Artsakh officials suspect that the fires may be a case of arson to destroy traces of Armenianness and begin the process of, not just begin, but continue the process of Islamization and de-Armenianization of Artsakh. You won't find anything about this in pro-government media for sure, but this is very concerning, and we just want to raise the issue with our audience.
Yeah. I only found a few articles, none of them from government sources. Go figure. I have a final topic, maybe. Armenia's consul in Yekaterinburg in Russia, Narek Spartakyan, was sacked this past week after 7 years on the job. He was assigned in 2018. And what did he do? Reportedly, he said, "I consider any actions against the Armenian Apostolic Church, an important foundation of the spiritual unity of all Armenians, unacceptable." That's what he said. And a Pashinyan crony, Vahak Naleksanyan, justified this sacking. He said, "In my view, an honorary consul has no right to speak out against policies of the elected authorities of Armenia."
Remember, Pashinyan recently was trying to paint that, his policies are not against the Armenian Church, but they're against specific Armenian clergy. But, this guy is saying basically, I defend the Armenian Apostolic Church, and he's getting sacked for it.
Yeah. Well, in general, I kind of agree that if you have an ambassador or a consul, they are assigned there to carry out the policies of your country in the foreign country. But what I didn't know is that Pashinyan's baseless, unconstitutional, psychotic campaign against the Armenian Church is a policy of the Armenian government. Isn't that what Aleksanyan is basically saying? That this government policy is to harass the Armenian Church, and that consul was not carrying out those policies.
Well, I'm sure you're being sarcastic when you say you didn't know that this was a policy. Obviously, we all know that this was a policy, whether it's stated or unstated. But yes, that is the case.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for this week. Anything else?
I think we've kept our audience engaged all this
long
time. Long enough. So yeah, let's call it a day.
Okay. That was our week in review, folks, recorded on August 4, 2025. And today we talked with Benyamin Poghosyan, a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, which is a Yerevan-based think tank. He's also the chairman of the Center for Political and Strategic Studies. For more information on all of us, you can go to our website, podcasts.groong.org/episode number. I don't know what number this will be, for example, /457 maybe. And you can find a lot more information. One thing I want to mention is that we will put that list of political prisoners in Armenia in the show notes. We also put routinely all of the links of the articles that we are referencing that we have seen about our topics. So there's a lot of good information in our show notes. Go check it out.
Yeah, and before we go, please don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're feeling generous, don't forget to donate to us at podcasts.groong.org/donate. In lieu of donations, we will also accept likes, shares, and comments.
You may not be able to send Armenian flowers to us.
Yeah. Do it as your way of saying F you to Scott Ritter or Ilham Aliyev, but any form of support would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate all of your comments. We read them. Thank you for participating on our shows, and we'll talk to you very soon. I'm Asbet Bedrosyan in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan from a very hot Yerevan that feels more like Riyadh than Yerevan.
I hope you have some weather relief coming your way, Hovik. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.